Prior to this moment, Karoline Leavitt had never been frightened by the spotlight. When it happened, nobody saw it coming. While she stood in front of the cameras, her voice was shaking, and her eyes were full of tears. At this point, there was a distinct difference. The self-assured and talkative individual that we had become accustomed to was all of a sudden vulnerable. She shared a stunning statement regarding her husband, and her emotions were raw from the experience. Was it a painful experience, a choice that will alter your life? Alternatively, something even more unforeseen? Her statements left everyone in the room speechless as the room fell into silence. At this point, the truth is at long last being revealed. This truth is what exactly? Getting to the point where Karoline Leavitt was performing on a national platform was not exactly what you would call usual. She was neither raised in a political dynasty, nor was she given a path that was predetermined for her. Being up in a family who owned and operated both an ice cream store and a used vehicle dealership, she was a girl from a small town in the state of New Hampshire. In spite of this, Karoline was already a captivating figure even back then. She possessed a voice that she was not afraid to utilize, as well as energy and ambition. Moving forward in time to college, that passion just grew greater as time went on. Karoline was generating headlines, writing daring op-eds, praising Trump's policies, and even forming her school's first broadcasting club at the same time that the majority of students were attempting to get through their midterm exams. The fact that she had opinions did not make her a typical pupil. Additionally, she ensured that everybody heard them. Individuals were able to hear them. Notable individuals took notice, which led her to immediately enter the conservative political arena. Following her internship at Fox News, she was offered a position at the White House, where she found herself working directly under Kayleigh McEnany. She went on to become a formidable figure in the field of political communications, eventually holding the position of representative, the director of communications for Elise Stefanik. Karoline didn't simply succeed in breaking through with her voice in a world where it might be difficult for young voices to be heard. She made sure that no one could forget about her. On the other hand, we are witnessing a different side of her today. As Karoline makes a significant statement about her spouse in front of the cameras, she is overcome with emotion and appears to be in a state of unshakable confidence. Believe me when I say that nobody saw this coming. A situation that Karoline encountered when she was recently elected was only one example of the difficulties that she encountered throughout her tenure. There was a buzzing in the press room, and you could practically hear the doubt that was hanging in the air without anyone speaking. Expectations were not exactly at an all-time high as the White House press secretary, who was the youngest in the history of the position, was about to take the podium. Some others believed that she would play it safe, keep to the script, and possibly make a mistake. It was expected by others that she would be anxious and overwhelmed by the situation, but then she took the initiative. In addition, it was obvious from the moment she began to speak. It was not her intention to play by the established norms. Her initial briefing lasted for 27 minutes. According to the norms of opening day, that is a marathon. However, the length was not the only thing that got people talking about it. How she dealt with it was the issue. There was no shying away from difficult questions, and there were no non-answers that were artfully crafted. Instead, she confronted the media head-on, disputing their narratives, pointing out prejudice, and making it quite obvious that she was not merely another spokeswoman from the organization. She was leading the charge. Peter Alexander, who works for NBC, pressed her with difficult questions, possibly anticipating that she would make a mistake. However, she did not. She never lost her composure and responded with self-assurance, never showing any signs of being shaken. The skeptics had entered the room, anticipating there would be evidence of inexperience. On the contrary, they came across someone who was completely aware of what she was doing. On a more serious note, this particular occasion did not occur by chance. Before she even stepped foot on the podium, she had already begun to make preparations for it. While she was attending St. Anselm College in New Hampshire, she was already studying the game and gaining an understanding of how politics and the media interact with one another. Based on this information, she was able to secure a position as an assistant press secretary at the White House of Donald Trump, where she remained until she was promoted to the position of national press secretary for his campaign in 2024. There was more to her than just being a passenger. In one of the most difficult political contexts, she was gaining knowledge, adjusting to new circumstances, and demonstrating her worth. However, it was not just her self-assurance that made her stand out. This was her plan of action. She observed a shift in the atmosphere of the media. Independent voices, podcasters, social media influencers, and non-conventional journalists were reaching more people than ever before, while established news channels were losing their hold on the audience compared to their competitors. She did not resist the shift. Rather, she embraced it without resistance. While she was seeking to win over legacy media, she did not waste any time. She went right to the platforms where people were listening to convey the message that the administration wanted to convey. The presence of a new face at the podium was not the only concern here. The manner in which the White House connected with the general public underwent a fundamental transformation. Starting from the very beginning, she made it clear that she was redefining a role. Since the beginning of time, the press briefings held at the White House have been controlled by the same traditional media groups and reporters who have asked the same questions. On the other hand, everything changed when Leavitt took control. All of a sudden, conservative influencers, podcast hosts, and independent digital voices were given a place at the table. On the part of the political establishment, it was a stunning decision. For her, it was nothing more than good sense. The traditional news was no longer being watched by millions of people in the United States. Why, then, should the White House choose to disregard them? And regardless of whether or not people liked it, her strategy was successful. In fact, the director of communications for the White House, Stephen Chung, referred to her initial press conference as the most effective one ever held. DC went into a frenzy as a result of just one sentence. The old approach, in which the narrative was controlled by mainstream media, has been rendered obsolete. Naturally, not everyone was a fan of the show. Leavitt was already a choice that was met with opposition. But her political beliefs were not the only subject of the inquiry. A significant amount of attention was paid to her private life as well. The real estate magnate Nicholas Riccio, who was 59 years old at the time of their marriage, was 32 years her senior. A great number of people had their own opinions. Were you in love? Was that a plan of action? They considered it to be a scandal. No one else could care less about it. Whatever the case may be, she was unfazed by the noise. More important things were on her mind at the time. Subsequently, the entire globe was turned upside down. In Butler, Pennsylvania, on July 13, 2024, a rally for Donald Trump was held. It had an electrifying quality to it. After that, there were gunshots. The chaos broke out. There was a gunshot that hit Donald Trump. There was a swarm of Secret Service agents. Supporters let up a yell. Although he was bleeding, he continued to stand. It was not simply the nation that was shaken by the event. Everything shifted as a result. Leavitt experienced it on a whole different level than everybody else. That day, she was not present in the audience. Not even in Washington, she was not there. She was at home, cuddling her toddler son, who had only been born 3 days before. She acted as if the rally was nothing more than another campaign event when she had turned it on. However, all of a sudden, she found herself helpless to do anything but sit there, paralyzed, as she witnessed the unfolding of history in real time. The video content was played in a never-ending loop. As if it were a freight train, its weight overtook her. This little vulnerable life was being held by her as she became a new mother. On the other hand, she was also a political activist, and she was aware, on some level, that this was about more than just Trump. The topic at hand was the future. As a result, she made a choice that the majority of new mothers would not even consider possible. She then turned to her husband and expressed her intention to return. There are 4 days. She did not give herself anything else. Even though she had just given birth, she made her return to the combat screen 4 days later. The spectators were taken aback. How was she able to accomplish that? Why would she do that? Her body hadn't fully recovered yet. It had been less than a week after her baby was born. However, the response was straightforward for Leavitt. She later stated that the president came dangerously close to losing his life while fighting for this country. Getting back to work was the very minimum that I could accomplish. Others referred to it as loyalty. According to some, it was insane. To her, however, it was nothing more than carrying out the tasks that were required of her. To her, the fact that Trump was able to survive was not merely another wild political event. It was a form of assertion. Despite the fact that the world was trying to bring you down, it demonstrated that you could remain standing if you had the qualities of perseverance, tenacity, and pure stubbornness. In the event that he was able to take a bullet and continue, what justification did she have for giving up? So, let's not sugarcoat this. To return to politics while also balancing the responsibilities of a baby was not a walk in the park. Within a single moment, she was confronting reporters at the podium of the White House. The following day, she pondered whether or not her child even made a mental note of her appearance. She abandons her child on a daily basis? It breaks my heart. She acknowledged that it does take a toll on your heart. In any case, did she slow down? None of the above. For some reason, that was not in her nature. Furthermore, she was in possession of a covert weapon. Nicholas Rio, her husband, was here. Despite the fact that he was not one to be in the spotlight, the individual was the glue that held everything together behind the scenes. During the time that she was dealing with the pandemonium in Washington, he was at home making sure that his son was fed, cared for, and hopefully not already scheming his escape from the crib before she arrived. Fortunately for her, his business career gave him the opportunity to advance in ways that the majority of people never noticed. The assassination attempt had sent shockwaves throughout the nation, but for her, it was a challenge to her stomach. She was reminded of the reasons why she had chosen this road, the reasons why she had sacrificed things that the majority of people would consider to be insignificant, and the reasons why leaving was simply not an option. Therefore, when she stood in front of the press just a few days after one of the most horrifying moments in contemporary politics, she was not simply trying to keep her composure with her, she was increasing her efforts. On the other hand, nobody was aware that something more personal would emerge from beneath her calm and collected appearance. She was not only juggling the responsibilities of children and politics, but she was also poised to reveal a shocking revelation about her husband, which would have everyone talking. Presently, in the realm of politics, each and every relationship is scrutinized as if it were a case of a private investigator. Moreover, what about her union to Nicholas Rio? There were people who raised their eyebrows. However, in contrast to the typical power couple pairings that are seen in the District of Columbia, their alliance was not based on career movements or political affiliations. They first met at a political function, which was one of those stuffy, high-energy occasions when everyone shakes hands, makes power moves, and pretends they are not exhausted. Already, she was on the rise, and she was completely in her element there. While this was going on, Rio, a real estate magnate who had more money than the majority of people could ever hope to have, had absolutely no interest in participating in the political game. It was almost as if the guy did not even bother to speak to the press, let alone care about making headlines. Nevertheless, when they were introduced to one another via a buddy they shared, something clicked. On paper, they were completely bonkers. She was young, and ambitious, and she thrived on the attention of the public. By the time he was 32 years old, he had developed an allergy to social media, and he could not have cared less about the most recent controversy on Twitter. In this society, when individuals literally measure success by the number of followers they have on Instagram, he has none. Not even a Facebook page, let alone a Twitter or LinkedIn account, for the sake of nostalgia. It was unheard of for someone with his level of power to do anything like that. Whereas other people perceived a mismatch, they recognized balance in the situation. In addition to making waves, she commanded rooms. He was the unassuming tactician who did an amazing job following the action from the sidelines. The nature of their friendship was not merely extraordinary. They were the kind that caused people to talk about it. Not everyone understood it. Some people adored it. Nevertheless, it was successful for them. Individuals were unable to refrain from discussing it. The disparity in ages was not merely a casual observation. It turned into the topic of discussion. Social media was flooded with opinions, and they were not the kind that were subtle. The term opportunistic was used by some. There were many who questioned its veracity. Every time she uploaded a picture of herself with Rio, the remark area was made available to users. Could it be your father? One individual made fun of it. The jugular was the target of another direct attack. Despite the fact that your husband might possibly be your grandfather, you still judge everyone else? But she was not going to accept it. The only thing that is required is quiet, unwavering confidence. There are no lengthy defenses or theatrical clapbacks. According to what she wrote, he is my #1 fan. His father is the best, and he is the best man I've ever met. They had no concept who they were dealing with, if they believed they could humiliate her to the point where she would withdraw her statements. During the time that the internet was analyzing their every action, she and Rio were in the process of living their life in a manner that was private, deliberate, and without the requirement of an audience. There were no extravagant exhibitions or magazine spreads at all. There were just two people who were aware of what they had. Each and every one of their engagements followed a similar pace. The day of Christmas, 2023, at their own home, with no theatricality. She responded to his question, and that was the end of it. On the following day, she distributed a single photograph. As Rio got down on one knee, a diamond caught the light of the winter season. It was the most wonderful Christmas of my entire life. I will finally be able to wed the man of my dreams. There is no showmanship or emotion that is being performed. Only true joy. Each of their weddings was identical. They chose to hold their ceremony completely out of the public eye, in contrast to the majority of political figures who choose to hold grandiose ceremonies that garner a lot of attention. There is no press, there are no exclusives, and there are no mystery unknown sources that are leaking information. It is not even a wedding announcement that she posted online. Wife was the only word that needed to be added to her bio, which she just updated. Not even the marriage was able to slow them down. Things went into high gear as a result of it. She took on a position that is considered to be among the most difficult in Rio's political arena. He continued to handle his real estate empire in the same manner that he'd always done. My Life as a Political Spouse is not a quick memoir release, nor are there any interviews, attention-seeking situations, or rapid memoir releases. In the exact location where he desired to be, he remained hidden from view. However, this did not imply that his presence was not perceived. When she surprised everyone by going back to work only 4 days after giving birth, numerous questions were raised by those around her. In what way is that even conceivable? It's easy. It's Rio. At the same time that she was dealing with the media, he was at home making sure that his newborn boy had all he required. Throughout her life, she referred to him as her most ardent supporter, the individual who gave everything and asked for nothing in return. But what nobody understood was the extent of the sacrifices that he had made as well. In addition to playing the role of the obedient spouse who stood in the background and nodded his head in agreement like a well-dressed extra, he also played other roles. There was something considerably more significant. And when she eventually spoke her feelings and disclosed the truth about him, people finally comprehended what she was saying. There was something that Nicholas Rio had been carrying that no one had anticipated. It had never been intended for him to be the center of attention. Rio remained in the background, where he felt the most at ease, while she created history by becoming the youngest person to ever hold the position of press secretary in the White House. People had the presumption that he was just another affluent businessman who had done everything in the correct way. His tale, however, prior to Nicholas Rio's achievement, prior to his millions of dollars, prior to his political influence, Nicholas Rio had nothing. It was not what anyone had anticipated. Rio was without a house when he was 18 years old, when most other children were anxious about applying to colleges. It was not possible for him to have a backup plan, a safety net, or a reassuring word from his parents that he could always come home. He was by himself at the time. Rio recognized an opportunity, in contrast to the majority of people who would be focused on surviving in that specific situation. There was no room for fallibility. In spite of the fact that he had no contacts and very little money, he worked tirelessly to save every single dollar he could. It wasn't until the early 2000s that he became aware of derelict properties in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, which are places that the majority of people would not even consider. The rest of the world regarded them as a hopeless cause. In Rio's eyes, they were a treasure trove. Beginning with a little investment, he began by purchasing homes that were unpopular, repairing them, and transforming them into rentals that were in high demand. Every penny that he made was invested back into his company without any delay. By the year 2005, he had constructed something true. 15 buildings, 70 rental units, and a reputation for being someone who recognized value in situations when others did not. The expansion of his empire followed. Rio Enterprises LLC, his company, has locations all along the east coast of New England. The same tactic was utilized by him. Discover areas that have been forgotten, transform them into something of value, and never go beyond your limits. Before people were even aware of his identity, he had already amassed a fortune in the millions of dollars. However, this is the part that nobody anticipated. He wasn't merely interested in making money off of his assets. They developed into something higher, a place where people congregate, as a place of gathering. Within the conservative community, a force that is unknown but formidable. During the time that other people were making noise, he was moving around. And yet, despite everything that happened, he never once became the center of attention, never attempted to gain recognition. Not once did I feel the need to demonstrate anything. Due to the fact that the most powerful individuals, they never seem to be the ones who are making the most noise. In the absence of anyone being aware of it, they are the ones who are tugging the strings. The majority of guys in his situation would go out of their way to flaunt their fortune and make sure that everyone knew their names. In no way Nicholas Rio. During the time that other real estate moguls were standing next to their private jets and giving TED Talks about the buzz and bustle of the industry, Rio was quietly shifting pieces behind the scenes. He was not interested in having influence. In terms of results, he was fascinated. Because of this, he became even more intriguing in some regard. By way of illustration, let's take one of his properties. Additionally, it was not merely another investment in real estate. It became a gathering place for conservative women, and it played host to Trump gatherings that had a significant impact on the ladies who attended. Rio, on the other hand, was not only a wealthy philanthropist who sent checks from the convenience of his office. Because he was a strategist, he made sure that his achievements had some significance. Rio, on the other hand, took a different approach, in contrast to the millionaires who couldn't help but mention their politically connected links. Not even interviews. There are no album covers, no Instagram posts that have been carefully selected. On the internet, the man was hard to find. It came close to being impressive. In addition, he remained in the background for a period of time, until the moment that his marriage to Karoline Leavitt thrust him into the public eye from the very beginning. Naturally, this was not a choice. Because of the age gap between them, social media had a field day. It was a cruel and insensitive comment. Speculation, criticism, and insistence that it had to be transactional were voices that were heard. However, here is what they did not understand. In terms of appearances, their marriage was not built. Sharing beliefs, respecting one another, and having an understanding that, in their society, stability at home was non-negotiable were the foundations upon which it was constructed. Therefore, when Karoline was working in one of the most high-pressure political jobs, Rio made sure that their home life was exactly what it was supposed to be. Its home. Additionally, he did not show any reluctance when their son, Nicholas Robert, was first born. He did not disengage from his kingdom because he was forced to do so. Rather, he did it because he desired to do so. Altering one's priorities was not a significant cost for a man who had constructed everything from nothing. It was just the kind of thing you do when you are really committed to something. However, it was inevitable that Rio would eventually come face to face with the reality, regardless of how hard he tried to avoid being noticed. And when Karoline finally revealed to the public what he had done, it was enough to leave even the most seasoned political insiders in a state of shock. People had been asking the same question for several weeks. How does she manage to achieve this? She had a newborn, a career that consumed her entire life, and the unrelenting strain of public life. How was she able to keep all of these things together without entirely falling apart? It had only been 4 days since she had given birth when she went back to work. At the same time as some people found it to be motivational, others questioned how she was even able to handle it. Then, one day, everything broke down completely. Suddenly, Karoline became unable to maintain her composure and professionalism while standing in front of a room full of reporters. She was acting exactly like a press secretary. She inhaled deeply, regained her composure, and then, in an instant, she did something that no one had anticipated. Therefore, she surrendered the mask. In a tone that was out of character for her, she added, "I've been asked many times how I've managed to balance this job, being a new mom, and everything else that comes with it." My voice was uncharacteristically rough. If I hadn't had my husband at my side, I never would have been able to accomplish any of this. In an instant, the man who had been hiding in the shadows for a considerable amount of time became impossible to ignore. Even though there was a lot of speculation regarding their relationship, nobody had a complete understanding of the situation. It is not accurate to say that Nicholas Rio was merely a prosperous businessman or a subdued political figure. Under the pressure of her professional life, he made certain that their family did not disintegrate. During that very moment, Karoline elucidated the extent of the sacrifices that he had made. Rio had already made a decision a very long time before their son was even born. There were no news stories that covered it, and political strategists did not recommend it. What was required of him was carried out. In preparation for Karoline's return to work, he took a step back, rearranged his entire schedule, and made certain that their family did not experience any disruptions. The fact that Nicholas did not hesitate when she told him that she wanted to go back to work as soon as possible is something that she admitted. I just heard him say that we will work things out. Indeed, he did it. She discussed the feelings of shame and sadness that she experienced as a result of leaving her kid every day, as well as the times when she found it to be intolerable. You received this pep talk each and every time Rio was there, and it was not with empty reassurances or some hazy words of encouragement. Rather, it was with action. My ability to accomplish this is made possible by the fact that I am aware that Nicholas is with his father and that he is present at every stage of the process. As soon as that happened, the story took a different turn. There was more to Nicholas Rio than just being a wealthy businessman or the husband who remained hidden in the background. It was because of him that the entire operation was successful. Without a doubt, he had established an empire. But what was his most important investment? The one thing that genuinely differentiated him from others? It was the one thing that he had been silently giving up each and every day without anticipating receiving anything in return. The press conference that brought about the change in everything occurred next. Leavitt, who is noted for her ability to maintain her cool, shed tears as she realized how much her husband had sacrificed for the sake of their family. In that very instant, the conventional political script was completely thrown out the window. There was no competition between the two of them, nor was there any attempt to eclipse the other's career. We were in a partnership, and we were sincerely looking out for one another's best interests. Naturally, the media had a field day with this story. As a working mother, was she setting a standard that was difficult to achieve? Or was she demonstrating that women in positions of authority do not have to choose between pursuing their ambitions and caring for their families? In a world where power frequently comes at a price, Leavitt and Rio demonstrated that the true nature of success is determined by the people who are at your side. And perhaps, just possibly, the tale they have to tell will motivate others to reconsider what it means to be in a genuine partnership.